Well, good day, everyone. Welcome back to Frontlines and Faultlines with Mike Kelly. And in this episode, we're going to continue our conversation with Justin Howden. Last episode, you'll recall, we set the scene in terms of what Australia's vulnerability was in relation to our fuel supplies as really being highlighted and illustrated in this current crisis that we're having. And I guess the issue around that is these sorts of crises are not going to go away because we're dealing with a volatile region in the Middle East. No certainty about tomorrow or the day after, even if there is some short-term solution or agreement on getting supplies flowing again, knowing that the Strait of Hormuz is about 20% of the world's fuel supply passing through there. And so we also teased out the issue that the stuff's running out anyway. It's not going to last something like 30 to 50 years. So let's get busy now on planning the solutions to this problem for Australia in particular, and not only how it reduces all those security dimensions we unpacked, but what does this mean for our economy in general? You know, we're a large nation with a lot of ground to cover, and transport fuels are really critical to this nation in getting our production of whatever it is, be minerals or agricultural supplies, to market, to Australians, but to the overseas markets as well. So there's a much broader economic question that we have to begin planning for. And I mentioned how Sweden has been very intentional around that and began that process back in 2005. But here we haven't seen that kind of bipartisan commitment, national will being harnessed to develop something that we can all sign up to and understand and be explained to us. So that we will build the social license around doing the things that are necessary. But of course, cost is a big factor, and everyone's really feeling that now, particularly our rural and regional areas. The broader impacts on the economy are very significant, inflation, all the rest of it. So let's talk more this week about that broader economic challenge and what would it take to deploy the solution to this, fitting within that overall economic context. So, Justin, thanks for that conversation in the last episode, and to build on that now with how we actually do this, and what is this really a viable economic possibility? So, you highlighted that we're talking about 33 billion litres of diesel a year required, and of course that's going to grow as we have a growing population, and as we need further underpinnings for our transport sector and markets. When we talk about this alternative system, how would that look? What sort of production methods and units are we talking about that would actually make the product, and on what scale would we need that to be deployed to get to our 33 billion litre challenge?
Great question, Mike, and thanks again for the chance to chat. If we look at 33 billion litres being Australia's total demand of diesel at the moment on average a year, as you said, it's going to go up. We know that. More agricultural output, more things that require diesel outside of metro areas, mining mineral resources, critical minerals extraction and processing, all of this stuff needs energy and moving things around. In the last episode, we talked about not using diesel to transport diesel as far away from the metro refineries as we can possibly get it, which is a major emissions and road use issue. So deconstructing even just agricultural and resources diesel needs and putting those production units right across the country. It could be 500 in the short term. If each one made 2 or 3 million litres per year, one unit that fits in a 20-foot shipping container. 500 of those is a great down payment and probably producible out of all the stuff that's here in Australia. So the engine design, sheet metal work, all the piping, and we do all that for dairy and so much other stuff and diesel already. So it's not an import. It's actually probably an import replacement opportunity, as well as starting a whole new advanced manufacturing industry. So if we look at even just for 10% of that, which is roughly agricultural and rural consumption of diesel, we're probably going to need 2,000 of those units. And this is technology agnostic. As I mentioned in the last episode, there's 2 or 3 locally IP invented and commercialized technologies here that can do this. So there could be up to 2,000 of those units deployed across Australia that literally go on the back of a truck out to where they are. They're commissioned, installed. They obviously need some upstream and downstream piping and tanking work. The average cost for one of those lines is, say, close to 2.5 million. You can see the numbers add up very quickly to get to the 10%, but it's the critical 10% that provides all the food, feed, most of the resources that we're exporting. So it's a good place to start at a great focal point.
Right. So 2,000 machines across Australia would deliver the 33 billion litres.
No, it would deliver the agricultural 10%.
Okay. Right.
So that's the 10% benchmark is probably around
Okay.
3 to 4 billion of capital deployment. And you can virtually just scale that. So it's not insignificant. And it's also as part of the energy mix. Again, this is not instead of, this is as well as. It's a key enabler for sovereign capability, resilience, the rural and regional impact, the ag food feed impact. It's probably the right place to start.
Okay, so, but if we wanted to replace the 33 billion altogether, so then we're looking at 200,000 machines, right?
Basically, yes. Yep.
Okay. So 200,000 machines, just to put that into perspective, if we looked at, say, another form of energy distribution, say electricity, and you looked at substations and their distribution across Australia, you're actually talking about there's at least, it's hundreds of thousands. So there's 700,000 substations out there alone belonging to Essential Energy and the utility operators. So, and they're no more, complicated than what these machines would be, I'm assuming, because there's not a lot of moving parts in this system.
No, correct. It's quite, I don't want to say it's not rocket science, but it basically is. But they're quite simple. So the trick in the IP is how you actually convert it simply to get you dropping diesel, not just something that then needs much greater processing and refining.
It doesn't have to be connected to a grid. It's basically self-sufficient.
And basically 3-phase power, like every farm or every rural city will have a source like that. And it just chuns away literally by itself 24/7. You keep feedstock going in, the drop-in diesel keeps coming out.
Right. And I assume we've talked about, it being able to use salt water and the rest of it, and it's sort of the grey water and whatnot. So you could plug into an artesian basin supply for that too, couldn't you?
Definitely. And that would be growing the algal source of feedstock, not the seed oil or vegetable-based feedstock.
Right. So basically for the machine you would have in a particular location or on a particular farm or whatever, you'd have to select one type of production basically, or perhaps you could have two different machines on the priority, one for the waste product stuff and the other for the algae product.
Yep. Very simply able to be done. Yep.
Right. So 200,000 machines, no different from the hundreds of thousands of substations we got out there, and manufactured in Australia.
Definitely.
Right. And so using Australian resources as well, we could build them from everything that we have here, the metals, etc.
Yep.
Right.
There's nothing in these systems that can't be made or procured here onshore.
Right. And I'm assuming there'd be, I guess, the need to maintain the systems occasionally. So some sort of techo would have to come out and check it out. And
absolutely. So everything from engineering, design, fabrication, installation, annual sort, whatever the servicing pattern needs to be. Not dissimilar to the auto industry and how they manage cars and all the rest of it. It's a very similar advanced manufacturing sector that we could be building here, probably across southeastern Australia and northeastern Australia.
Right. And the
demand.
And the skills and knowledge to do that all exist in Australia already.
Yep.
And so doing those kind of localized options would create localized jobs around all this as well, which in turn putting money back into the economy.
Absolutely. And it's a large economic contribution with a disproportionate outcome on the rural and regional side. So instead of it being centralised through the metro, and not that there's anything wrong with that, as they say, but pushing it back out to the rural and regional centres, but all that money flows through that rural and regional economy and all the businesses in that supply chain. So what do people do when they've got a bit of extra money out there? They'll go and spend something at the stock and station agent. They'll upgrade the tractor. So it's sort of that virtuous cycle of the more activity that goes on out there, the more activity goes on out there.
Right. So in terms of the cost of the actual product per litre, they're going into vehicles, the long haulers and the industrial plant and all that sort of stuff, farm machinery. What sort of cost would you see it starting out as, and could it be reduced over time?
Short answer is yes, it would reduce over time. It would start probably roughly where the current prices are. So is it the cheapest source of diesel in the old days? No. Is it a better source of diesel than no diesel? Yeah. Is it cost competitive to what's going on now? Yeah, we believe it is. Right. As it deploys more and the cost of units comes down because we're making more units as an industry, clearly that would reduce the output price.
Right. Okay. So we'll come back to that part of it, price to consumer element of it. But firstly, the price of the machines themselves. So what do you estimate the cost at present of constructing a single machine?
If you allowed roughly 2.5 million for a single line, which would produce roughly 2 million litres a year.
Right. And so effectively, what would your estimate be of the cost in today's dollars of producing the 200,000 machines that would transition the entire biodiesel consumption issue in Australia?
An astronomical amount of money, because that's what it's going to cost, and there's no way of saying it won't. But if you do the basic stats of even on a much greater production quantity, an installation of 2.5 million, a million machine, 25 billion.
25 billion for 200,000 machines, or
No, it was for a million machines.
a million machines?
So
Right. But if you only needed 200,000,
100, yeah, if you said 100,000 machines, you're stretching my mental arithmetic here. 100,000 machines at 2.5 million, so it's 25 billion.
Right. So there's a fairly significant sum.
Here we are. So again, how much is going to be spent in capital works, renewals, the R&M on current things that are, many of these current installations are coming to the end of their natural economic life. So they'll need to be upgraded, refitted, R&M, etc. There was a most recent brand new refinery that's been put up in the last 20 years, was budgeted for 9 billion, and that was in Africa.
Right.
And it took them probably 12 years to build it. That's not a go at anybody. That's just a fact. These things are big, difficult, complex things to do. As part of the energy mix, yeah, we probably do need another one. As part of what we're saying, though, for resilience, supply chain, shock absorber, literally distributed and out and about in the rural and regional areas, it's step by step. If we got to, as we said earlier, 1,000 machines, then 2,000, then it's almost exponential as the deployment goes up. Then you probably look at 10,000 jumps as we're able to build more and more of this as we get much better at building these faster or economically.
Yeah, productivity always improves as you start building your volume and processes and expertise.
Yep.
So the costs would come down.
Definitely.
I guess you put that in context too, the fact the government's throwing over $14 billion at this current crisis. This would be an investment in never having to spend that amount of money again.
Yeah.
On building up a reserve, just a reserve particularly. So I guess it would be an investment in long-term, economic stability, but also security. So you could look at it in the context of those two, policy objectives. But it is a bill, and I guess the ways you might tackle it, as you flagged, is start with the rural and regional areas to establish their independence from and buffer against these sort of crises, and at the same time, that's kind of contributing to our agricultural and food security issues.
Definitely.
So, because you would combine in this the product of the fertilizer as well, wouldn't you? That'd be part of the process, or?
Correct. Yep, that's certainly doable. And the same technology, instead of producing drop-in diesel with some, again, I'm not a rocket scientist, but with some technical changes at the front end, could be producing organic fertilizers.
Right. So there's a potential, that's an investment then in our long-term reduction of costs and security, particularly as we see the dwindling supplies that will happen over the next 30 to 50 years. The price of that raw material and the diesel and even the refined product for passenger vehicles will escalate significantly as it becomes more increasingly costly to extract.
Yep.
So it's kind of a hedge against that price increase as well.
Absolutely. And what's the old saying? When was the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. The second best time is now. When's the best time to start this transition? Now.
Right. Okay, so that would require some really intentional thinking and planning by government, and thinking in multi-year generational terms. But starting out, I guess in a digestible chunk with the rural regional areas could help you establish the industry itself that would underpin this, and help enable you to ensure costs were lowered when you tried to move to the next stage. I guess then you come to the question of the price for consumers of the product. And we've seen a lot of regimes in place over years to support consumers in relation to certain policy desirable objectives. So subsidies around installing batteries and solar panels on your roofs.
Yep.
There was the whole diesel excise debate that's gone on. So I guess there are mechanisms available there that would ensure that in the initial phases of establishing the industry, you could support the price point.
Definitely. As simple as being able to have the same policy mandates in the renewable energy, solar, wind, etc. If that applied to this sector, that changes the nature of the deployment for speed to value, being able to create faster and deploy faster.
Right. And as you go, you could then steadily withdraw the diesel subsidies, etc. So it would be a sort of a like-for-like transition process in that respect.
That's right.
And I guess one of the factors would be the effect on emissions, and decarbonising the economy. When we were talking with the algae tech guys, their guess was that the algae-based product would be about 26% of emissions from the fossil fuel product. Have we seen any research done on what the emissions would likely be from the waste product supply?
As a reduction or as a percentage of what's currently there? Sorry, just to clarify that. You meant so.
Okay, so let's take the fossil fuel product right now. So the algae tech crew was saying that their product, the algae-based product, would be about 26% of the emissions of a fossil fuel output. So do we know what the waste product equation is?
Yeah, there's roughly that number you were quoting. It's 25 to 33%, hopefully, of the current emissions would be generated by going through the algal green crude type inputs.
Right. So we'd be looking at...
That would drop it quite substantially. Yeah.
Right. So that would be a similar dynamic. So we'd be looking at about a 70% reduction in transport emissions from that area, not the overall bill, actually, because we'd still have, this continuing conversion of passenger commuter vehicles to electric vehicles. And I think, part of the issue there is we've increasing numbers of Australians living in strata environments. And the issue was, how do you actually set them up for home charging? And now there's the technology available for that, which is really exciting.
Yes.
So,
gotcha. Yep.
Yeah. And well, now because, I'm just living in an apartment myself, we've been through this discussion about the building not being able to cope with having everybody on a fast charger, and you'd have to upgrade the substation and spend $1 million doing that. Etc. And there's fire risks. But now the technology exists there when you can set up these trickle feed systems in an apartment. So every apartment, and part of the cost was connecting your car park to your unit's meter, which would cost you, say, $10,000 to do. But with this new system, you connect directly to the common or communal electricity supply that's available in a car park, and the body corporate you put a meter on the outlet, and so that body corporate can charge you for that electricity use on behalf of the building, etc. And so it would only cost maybe up to $500 or so to do that individual car park connection. So you give everybody the option. So we're now reaching a solution that will mean that apartment dwelling community, which is growing significantly. It's now about a fifth of the population of the OCT, for example.
Oh, wow.
So we should see a continued acceleration of the electric vehicle pickup. So the combination of these two things would actually take the emissions from the transport sector down even to a greater extent, across the board. You'd be looking at something like 80% reduction there overall. But so the emissions and health outcomes from that would be pretty good too, because I'm assuming you don't need chemical additives and toxic byproducts, from this process.
Correct. Yep.
Right.
So it's quite a simple system.
Right. So the toxicity levels just basically disappear as well. So the health impacts are tremendous from that. And you can, imagine what the cost to the economy is of the health impacts of having 11,000 people dying from things like, I know the health processes that have been involved with my brother, managing him through leukemia, have obviously been large scale costs. So eliminating that would really help our health system as well. So you can see the broader economic benefits. Have you guys thought about how you would economically manage this? What sort of policy proposals you could put to government in how to achieve beginning the story here, beginning the process?
Yeah, we have. We put a pre-budget submission in the fantastic scheme that's there in Australia.
Right.
And that outlines some of the key things that we were just talking earlier about, reflecting the same sort of policy mandate and support for the renewables, because in effect, this is a renewables play. That's probably the single greatest enabler that we could get to get this new industry and advanced manufacturing sector up and going pronto.
Right. Yeah, I know back in the day, I spent, a bit of a period of time in the agriculture, fisheries and forestries department, and there were a range of issues or options available there from a policy point of view to support, basically the research as well. You had the Australian Centre for Renewable Energy, and you had funding associated with that and second generation sort of fuels, etc., using biomass and wood waste and stuff like that. Did all of those disappear, or are some of them still there?
No, some of them are still there. Another area apart from algal for biofuels is the cellulose and waste wood treatment. That's another version of potential feedstock as well. Yep, that'll be still going. Yes.
Right. So I guess, you've got your plantation timber industry out there, and I know that's been a big source of bio-waste for the Swedes, for example. So having a sustainable plantation industry, could really also have this extra byproduct around it as well.
Yeah, and again, because you're commercialising or monetising the waste streams from there, that makes effectively a double whammy to the profitability of those organisations, because they're not paying to get rid of their waste; they're actually earning money from usefully using the wastes.
Right. So commercialising every aspect of the feed material,
extra revenue in and reduction of expenses out to get rid of it.
Right. So that makes so we're moving towards a circular economy here with this concept as well.
Yeah.
So when did you make the submission?
We put it in the end of last year and talked to many different players in the process, and we're still talking to them.
Right. So no firm sort of feedback yet in terms of...
No, but what's the old saying? There's a lot of pushing on open doors. There's a lot of support in general for this. Probably not the greatest time to be putting in a budget submission asking for extra. But if we didn't ask, we don't get.
Yep.
And we've started the opportunity through Microalgae Australia to advocate for the better policy settings, talk up the opportunities for investment in this, because this is something that is an investment, not an expense. This will generate returns. That's not financial advice, by the way.
Yep.
But it's got a huge opportunity here for Australia in both the resilience, supply chain shock absorbing, but also starting a whole new advanced manufacturing industry, which would be great for using all of different people around with their skills and capacity, and getting things going.
Right. And as we say, potentially getting rid of the sort of costs of maintaining a strategic oil reserve and spending $14 billion on getting there for that. So the headline figure here looks big, but that's the headline figure on today's dollars, not taking into account the productivity gains as you went along with this. And as every market works, with volumizing, costs come down. Yeah, so
Absolutely.
Yeah, so there's a lot of potential there. And the other aspect of it too, to me, is you mentioned there's a lot of research going on in different tertiary institutions, etc. Is there collaboration going on? Are they networking this surge, or is it all competitive?
No, a lot of it's pre-competitive. So there's a Marine Bioproducts Cooperative Research Centre, which sort of has a footprint in this area as well. That's a very, very efficient and effective organisation. The universities cover literally the whole country. So yeah, they do meet regularly and discuss. One of the roles of Microalgae Australia, though, is to be that collecting point and dissemination of making sure it is all available for everyone.
Right.
Everyone's busy, researchers are busy, they're researching. So we're going to have value by making sure everyone's aware of everything that's going on. That's classic good from an industry.
Yeah. Well, I think another way to put this in perspective too is we've seen the Snowy Hydro 2 project, and it's had massive challenges. It started out as a $2 billion estimate, and I've seen figures bounced around now of like $42 billion. But I guess you could go back and look at this and sort of examine the engineering and the geotech sort of analysis, and see where mistakes were made, etc., and all that sort of thing. But ultimately, as with the original Snowy Hydro scheme, it was an investment in energy security physically. So it's very hard to take out with weapon systems. But secondly, in the current context, you're talking about something that will underpin the stability and transition to renewable energy in general. So one-off sort of cost to get to that kind of baseline is obviously something that we're all interested in trying to get to this zero emissions target. So you look at it in that context, this would actually be a lot cheaper, with a lot less risk, because we're talking about simplified technology really here and simplified materials. No underground tunneling, geotech expertise or anything like that not required. But I particularly like the fact that it would be so distributed that it would really mean effectively it would be invulnerable. There's no ability for, say, the neighbours to the farther north launching a barrage of intercontinental ballistic missiles and bringing down our transport sector through a couple of targets like we have now. Yep. And closing off sea lanes. So to me, that's something we should actually think about, perhaps, that we can find a staged way to do this, doing that rural and regional area aspect first, which would start, I think, the industry rolling. And then another element of this could be that we bring defence into this as a sort of a first adopter to help build that strategic weight. And I think the other aspect of that is you could then be offering to service, like the US fleet was looking at transitioning the biodiesel, so we could become a reliable, safe supplier for them, which I know would be of great interest to them in that sort of regional context, as we are now a maintenance hub for, say, the Joint Strike Fighters. Yep. So, we could play a critical role in that just overall general coalition security posture by being able to supply that demand as well.
That would be fantastic. And again, that's a rapid deployment. If we can get early stage in. They could be making these on bases, again, distributed, close to point of need. That's a big upside.
Right. Oh, very exciting to hear the work still continuing on this, Justin, and thank you for your work on that and all the work that you've done on trying to enable our industries to move to sustainable futures. And I hope that the departments and government engage really energetically with you and that the steam doesn't come out of it when this Hormuz crisis ends. And we start to develop that capability to do intentional long-term planning, taking a page out of the Swedish book.
It's a great analogy. Great. Thank you. And thank you very much for the chance to chat, Mo.
Good on you, Justin. Thanks, mate. And look, thanks for being with us, everyone. I hope you found this interesting, some food for thought. Really important for us to build a social license, a demand on government to come up with these sort of long-term solutions and make Australia safe, basically, not only from evil actors out there who use the dough from this stuff to conduct terror, but also to make sure that we're not vulnerable to other state actors who might seek to block our supplies, and from a health point of view and general economic sort of stability in the future. So thanks for being with us and look forward to talking to you again next time. Cheers.